So if you've been around churches about as long as I have, which is a pretty long time, there's a good chance you might have heard a phrase something like, it doesn't matter how good or how bad you are, we all need the grace of God equally. You might think that's a ridiculous sort of statement because, I'm not the greatest person that's ever lived, but, compared to Hitler, I'm pretty much the greatest person that's ever lived because Hitler's like the worst of the worst. I mean, we're talking genocide, monstrosities like we've never imagined before. Just there's no way that I need the grace of God and the salvation that Jesus provides as much as Hitler. There's just no way, right? But let's think of it like this. So you're probably familiar with a number of different sports, whether you've played them or not. You've seen them and have a general understanding probably of how they're played. Every sport has a winner and there are certain rules for how you win the game. Some types of sports, how you win the game is dependent on how many points you score, and there might not be any limit to those points in a theoretical sense. So sports like basketball, like football, like baseball, these types of sports are just how many points you can accumulate, how many baskets you make, how many runs you score, things like that. And you just keep adding them up, and theoretically there's no end, but you just keep stacking them on. If you have more than your opponent, you win. Other games are basically based on not making mistakes. Now, you're probably familiar with golf to some extent. Golf is a game where there is a perfect score that you can achieve, and the more strokes that you get on your scorecard, the worse it is for you. So having a higher number is actually a bad thing. Each standard golf course has 18 holes, and the best you can do on each one of those is a hole in one. So 18 is the lowest score that you possibly can get. That's a margin of error of 0. If you get a score of 19, that's a margin of error of 1. So most people tend to think of life as like a basketball game where our good deeds are on the one team and our bad deeds are on the other team. If our good deeds score more points than our bad deeds, then we win, and then we go to heaven. But that is not how it works with God. God works on a golf scoring basis where our bad deeds are just strokes that are being added to our scorecard, and the higher the strokes, the worse we do in life, basically. Now, it's very easy to compare ourselves to other people. And depending on who you compare yourself to, you might do better or worse, right? So let's just take one of the best people that we can think of. Let's just take Mother Teresa. Okay, Mother Teresa was a lady who gave her life for the poor and for kids, in orphanages and things like that. She lived a life of poverty. We would say, okay, she's next level, right? As far as benevolence goes and things like that, she's up there. So let's just take her, for example. Now let's just give her a number for her error rate. So obviously nobody's perfect, and Mother Teresa, while she was good, I mean, I'm sure she did some things that were wrong in her life, but let's just give her a number. Let's say it's 100, okay? Let's say over the course of her life, she gets a score of 100. Now, you're probably not putting yourself quite on Mother Teresa's level, but you're pretty good. So let's give you a score of, let's just say 1,000. Now, we can basically compare your life against Mother Teresa's using this equation. Again, this is another math video. Sorry if math isn't your thing. It's okay. I think you'll still get the point. But I know there's some people out there who think in these terms, so hopefully this is helpful for you. But basically we do this simple equation. We take your score, subtract Mother Teresa's, and divide by Mother Teresa's, multiply 100, and then we get this percentage number of 900%. So basically what we would say is you're like 900% worse than Mother Teresa. 900%, that's not great, right? But let's compare you to Hitler. And Hitler, again, was like the worst of the worst. Let's just say that he gets a score of 1,000,000, okay? He's just like terrible. Again, I'm just kind of making these numbers up, so don't come at me if you disagree with them, whatever, just whatever. You're going to get my point. But yeah, we basically run the same equation, 1,000,000, but we're going to put you in this time, minus 1,000, divided by 1,000, and then times 100 to get the percentage. And we see, okay, Hitler was about 99,900 times worse than you. So you're not like a super saint like Mother Teresa or something like that, but you're definitely not Hitler. He's like way worse. Now, here's the question. What are God's standards when it comes to this scoring method? Well, God's standard is perfection because he himself is perfect, and heaven is a perfect place. I've explained this in my Gospel Explained video. If you haven't seen that, go watch that. It'll illuminate some of this. As it turns out, the Bible states that Jesus lived a perfect life, and the proof of that is the fact that he died and was resurrected. So Jesus' score is 0. Now, let's take the same equation as before. Let's start with Hitler. So we got 1,000,000 minus 0 divided by 0 times 100, and that equals undefined. So we drew the Hitler numbers. Let's run the Mother Teresa numbers and see what happens here. So again, we get 100 minus 0 divided by 0 and equals undefined. Again, If you remember high school math, you remember doing this. Anytime you divide by a zero, you get this term undefined. What does undefined mean? Well, basically, we're trying to find the rate change between numbers. And as it turns out, the rate change from zero to any positive number is basically infinite. It's infinity. The rate difference between something and nothing, it's an infinite difference, okay? And that's kind of shocking because we take like the very best of humanity and the very worst of humanity. We compare them to Jesus and they boil down to the same thing. Even if you got someone that was so good and they had a score of 1, it doesn't make a difference. And this is kind of the shocking thing. It doesn't matter how good you are, and it doesn't matter how bad you are. We all essentially need the grace of God and the salvation of God exactly the same. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to equate Mother Teresa and Hitler, okay? I realize that Mother Teresa probably did some bad things in her life at some point, but whatever she did is not comparable to Hitler, right? Obviously, different sins affect people differently. Poking somebody in the eye and murdering them clearly have different consequences entirely. So yeah, I'm not trying to say like, oh, Mother Teresa, Hitler, basically the same. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, the outworkings of their lives are vastly different, where Mother Teresa was a net good in the world and Hitler was definitely a net evil on the world. But you see my point. It doesn't matter how good we are, it doesn't matter how bad we are. There's nobody so bad that they can't be saved. There's nobody so good that they don't need to be saved. There's nobody so bad that they can't get the grace of God, and there's nobody so good that they don't need the grace of God. We all need the grace of God because perfection is the standard and none of us match up. Anyway, I hope this helps you visualizing this concept. Again, this might be something you've already heard and known. Maybe this is just something that makes it a little more real or tangible, or I don't know what you want to say. Helps you to understand it in a new way. Yeah, again, if you have questions, comments, leave them down below. If you like this video, subscribe. If you haven't already, if you feel like there's someone that would benefit from this, feel free to share. But yeah, that's all I got for you today. So thank you very much for watching. I bid you adieu.